Hello, everybody. Very happy to be here today, and appreciate the fact that none of us had to drive to get there. It was quite the adventure yesterday when I was out in Port Huron, and it was
Mm.
exciting getting there, and even more fun trying to get back. So, but I made it, and but I'm safely at home today, and very happy to be here. So, I want to tell you. Let me. One thing, I retired in 2019, right before COVID, so I didn't get all the Zoom practice that everybody else who was working during COVID got. So I'm a little rusty on COVID. I'm a little rusty on Zoom, but here we go. It looks like I did this right. Um, so we're here tonight to talk about Allan Tolmich, and I will start from the beginning with him. But he, as you can tell just from that picture there, was quite the hurdler. He was absolutely amazing, just truly one of the greatest athletes to ever attend Wayne State University. And my knowledge of Tolmich began because of the book Coach of Champions. And the guy on the cover there, the coach, David L. Holmes, is my grandfather. And he was a coach at Wayne from 1917 until 1958. Also athletic director. At the very beginning, he was coach of everything, not just track. He was coach of football and basketball, baseball, even tennis for a little bit. So he did a lot of different things. And one thing that he did that was extremely different than other coaches of his era was he welcomed athletes who were black, Jewish, Eastern European, and strangely even Catholic. Catholics, depending on what university, were discriminated against as well. And so he was there with his arms wide open, actively trying to get just good athletes into his programs, and he really couldn't care less what anybody's background was. He was just looking for talent. So that was part of the reason that I even learned about Tolmich in the first place. Um, this is a picture of me and my uncle David. So my grandfather, Coach Holmes, had two children, a boy and a girl, and the girl is my mother, and the boy was my Uncle David here. And he was a professor of religion at the College of William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia. And so, as part of his work, he wrote a lot of books, tons of books, and he always had this side project where he was writing a book about his dad, Coach Holmes. And so I would ask him about, how's the book coming? And sometimes it was going along quite well, and sometimes it wasn't coming along at all. And uh, it just kind of was, tinkering around with it here and there, but not really putting his full effort into it because he was writing other books, the more scholarly types of books. He ended up in assisted living and was still working. He published a book while he was in assisted living. That was a book about William and Mary, but I would ask him when I would go and visit him, and this is us in his assisted living facility. I said, so how's the Coach Holmes book coming? And finally, at one point, he said to me, I just don't think it's going to happen. This is that project isn't gonna, you know, ever be finished. So I asked if I could take over the project, and he was happy to give it to me. And so when I got all of his materials, I looked over. He had an actual manuscript of the book that he had called The Character of Coaches. And I don't know if can even see it in that front line there. It says Coach Watson. It's like Coach Watson. Who's who's Coach Watson? I thought this was a book about Coach Holmes. And in fact, it wasn't a book about Coach Holmes. He was using, various stories of things that happened to Coach Holmes and to other coaches of that era in order to write a fictional book about Coach Watson. Um, I thought that the story of Coach Holmes was compelling enough that it ought to be that ought to be what we're talking about, a nonfiction book about Coach Holmes. Um, so I took his manuscript and set it aside, as interesting as it was. However, not all was lost. One of the things that my uncle did back in the 1990s and the early 2000s was he interviewed athletes that had run track for my grandfather. And so in Coach of Champions, every other chapter is a transcript of an interview with one of those athletes. And there is a transcript of an interview with Allan Tolmich in there as well. So, so it was, incredible information because once I took over the project, uh, of all of the athletes that, had been coached by my grandfather, there were only a very small handful still alive, and only one of them in the book is still alive. So I want to just give you a little bit of background on my grandfather, and then we'll move into to Allan Tolmich. So the Holmes family first started out in Kansas, and then they moved to Oklahoma. And one of the things that I find so interesting about this is you take a look at this map, which is a 1901 map, and it's Oklahoma territory. It's not the state of Oklahoma. And so just in my family, just two generations ago, they were living in United States territories, not states. Now, granted, my family might be a little late having children along the way, but at the same time, it's still two generations and it's a territory is pretty amazing. So they moved from Kansas to Oklahoma in 1897. Then they moved again to Stillwater in 1901. You see that star on the map there. That's where Stillwater is, which makes it look like it's on the very eastern portion of the state. However, it's kind of in the middle of Oklahoma because the whole eastern part of Oklahoma at that time was Indian territory. It says on the map Indian territory. So that was all a Native American area and not even part of the Oklahoma territory at the time. The reason that they moved to Stillwater was that was the location of Oklahoma A&M University. And it was a state university that was tuition free, and all you had to pay was room, board, and books. And if the family lived in Stillwater, then all you had to pay was books. And so the Holmes was a rather large family, and they were able to go to college for just the cost of books because my great grandfather was smart enough to move the family there. Um, this is the mile relay team of Oklahoma A&M in 1907. The gentleman second from the left is my grandfather, David L. Holmes. And you don't have to know anything about track to understand this presentation or even the chapters of the book, about the athletes. But I do point out some times every now and then. So this relay team, and it says right here on this picture, did a mile relay in 3 minutes, 28.4 seconds. Uh, on a regular track that you would see today around the outside of a football field, a mile is 4 laps around the track. And so each one of these guys in the relay would do 1 lap. And their laps were 52.1 seconds. They're on dirt. And I don't know if you can see their shoes, but if you look at the toes of their shoes, they've got about inch and a quarter spikes coming out of the bottom of their shoes. So the equipment is not great. Their conditions are horrible, and they're churning out 52.1 quarter miles. When I was in high school in the 70s and I ran the quarter mile, the best I ever did was a 52 flat on a synthetic track in excellent spikes. I wasn't wearing 1 inch 1 inch spikes to slow me down. So these guys were fantastic athletes to be able to do that with such poor conditions. Uh, this is the only picture I have of my grandfather jumping, which is too bad because that was the sport that was the event that he was the best at. Um, at the time, it was called the running broad jump. Today, we call it the long jump. Uh, Here is the results of a track meet that he was in. He came in second in the 100, third in the shot, second in the 220, third in the discus, first in the running broad jump. He was never beaten in high school and never beaten in college. And he did so well that he thought maybe he could be Olympic material for the 1912 Olympics in Stockholm, Sweden. The way that the Olympics work is there's some qualifying meets that you go to, and you keep moving up as you win. Uh, so he won at a couple of different meets and was accepted for the final meet in Evanston, Illinois, to go to be hopefully in the Olympics for the running broad jump that we know as long jump or the hop step jump. And so he went there to hopefully be get into the Olympics, but quite frankly, I hate movie trailers where they tell you everything that's going to happen in the movie. So I'm not going to tell you what happened. That's in chapter two, Holmes on deck. One of the things that I want to show you, just sometimes when we look at old records, we think that maybe they weren't really that great of an athlete. This is the pole vault, and from 1928. This is the 1928 Olympics pole vault competition. And I want you to notice a couple of things. The poles don't bend, and there's no 4 foot mat that they're landing in to protect them. They're landing on a little bit of sand. So they have to land on their feet in order to be successful to do that. So they might only be jumping over a bar that's 11 feet or 12 feet high compared to the 20 feet or 21 feet that they're jumping today. But they also had to land it on their feet from 12 feet, which is pretty good, I'd say. Sometimes we really can't compare apples to apples when we're looking at the old athletes and what they accomplished, because again, the conditions were totally different, their equipment was totally different, and it was just a different time than it is today. My grandfather. Worked at a couple of different colleges, and he was recruited by David McKenzie, who was principal of Central High School in Detroit in 1915, to come to Detroit and be part of a new college they were starting that was going to be called Detroit Junior College. And the junior college was being set up inside Central High School. Students who were in high school might be able to take a couple college classes, and other students who maybe were local to Detroit and couldn't go away or were working or something could take some classes and earn a college degree also, right in the city of Detroit. So let me just go back to this. He first, the junior college was opening in 1917. So when he was recruited, it wasn't quite ready. So they set him up at Cass Technical High School, where he was a physical education teacher and also the coach of everything, every sport at Cass Tech. While he was at Cass Tech, he met a young mathematics teacher by the name of Hazel Madden, and my uncle tells me that she was so smart and so good at math that she could multiply two three-digit numbers in her head. Amazing. That particular gene did not find its way to me. That's my grandmother. And so they got married in 1917, right as he was starting a new job at the Detroit Junior College. The way they met, the story goes, my grandmother was from Marquette, Michigan, where there's a lot of ice. I'm sure there's a lot of ice today, but I don't think their ice melts until sometime mid-July. And so she was a good skater and lots of skating experience. So there was a staff event with Cass Tech staff where they all went skating somewhere. I think Palmer Park, I heard, and my grandmother accidentally fell at the feet of Coach Holmes, and he picked her up, and the rest is history. Had she not faked that fall, I wouldn't be here today to give you this presentation. So thank you for doing that. So here is Central High School in Detroit, home of Detroit Junior College. And you might look at that picture and say, well, no, that's Old Main in Wayne State University. And you would be right. That is Old Main in Wayne State University, but it began life as Central High School. The principal, David McKenzie, started the Detroit Junior College, and then as the junior college grew, it pushed the high school out, and they had to build a new high school. And I have a picture of that in a little bit to show you. So there became a new Detroit Central High School, and then this became Detroit Junior College, and then changed names a few times that I'll tell you about as well. Now, the one thing about this building is very old, built in the 1880s, and it was built without any athletic facilities whatsoever. In 1908, they added a couple small gyms, just about the size of one basketball court each, but they had really no track facilities. So this is the main hallway of Old Main, and you see lines going down the hall. And if you can really look closely, you see two runners at the far end of the hallway ready to race. And the people standing in the hall are spectators for a sprint down the hallways of Old Main. And it's a tile floor. So we're talking horrible conditions. They've got dirt outside, they've got tile inside, the absolute worst possible conditions. The boys' gym had an elevated track. The girls' gym did not, because at the time, in 1908, when the gyms were built, it was thought to be too exhausting to have women run. Your bodies were not made to run. This is 1908 talking, not me. But the boys could have this elevated track. Now, when we talked about my grandfather and his mile relay, and I said it was, 4 laps of the track to make a mile, not on this track. On this track, it was 22 laps to make a mile because it was so small, they were basically just running in a circle the entire time. Here is a shot putter, and this is in the Wayne gym as well. You can see the elevated track behind him, but he's just on a regular gym floor. That shot weighs 16 pounds, and he's going to heave it in the air, and it's going to land with a huge bang on the floor. Just really, again, they just did not have the facilities. But the worst was really the pole vaulters. And this is from a newspaper article from the Free Press. And you see a pole vaulter out in the hallway of Old Main. He had to run down the hallway through the double doors into the gym in order to have enough space to actually pole vault inside. So very, very rough facilities. These are some old wood hurdles. That actually is Allan Tolmich on the right there, stretching before a hurdle race. But you can tell if you were to hit one of these, it wasn't going anywhere. You were. You were going to either get hurt or fall and probably be out of the race. And so they didn't move at all. So very primitive old hurdles. Whereas this hurdle right here is a more modern one. It was actually, this is a Holmes hurdle. It was invented by Coach Holmes. And if you hit this hurdle, it will fall down and get out of your way rather than hurting the athlete. But the gym was so small, the hurdlers could only jump one hurdle at a time. Uh, that's all the space they had. So they got to practice the first hurdle over and over and over and over again, which actually turned out to be really great for Allan Tolmich. Here's a picture before he got to Wayne. This is the 1922 track team. And back in the 20s, Coach Holmes had another really great hurdler whose name was Ed Spence. He was the NCAA champion in 1926 and 1927. and then set a new state record in also in 1927. So Tolmich was not the first great hurdler, but he was in a line of many great hurdlers that attended Detroit Junior College. This is the new Central High School, beautiful building, and this is where Allan Tolmich went to high school. And he actually was a hurdler in high school. And that's interesting, and I don't have an answer for this. You see that says Abe Tolmich underneath the picture. Anytime I find any information on him in high school, he's Abraham Tolmich. Anytime I find anything about him in college, he's Allan Tolmich. So somewhere between high school and college, he I don't know if that one of them was his middle name and one of them was his first name. I don't know how that worked. I don't have any information on that. But Abraham becomes Allen once he makes that move. And I know it's the same guy. It's not a different Tolmich. So he was a hurdler uh, at Central High School. This is the entries into the 1933 Detroit Public Schools track meet, and you see Tolmich from Central is entered in the 30-yard low hurdles. However, in a different newspaper article for the finals, he's not in those. So he did hurdles in high school, but he was not a championship hurdler in high school. Here he is in a picture of the 1932 varsity track team at Central. And you can tell just from that picture, he had some height and size disadvantages for being really successful at this. What he was a tennis player. He loved tennis, thought he was better at tennis than he was at track. Both of these articles are actually defeats, but he was very good, and it's noted in a lot of different articles that tennis was really his sport. Here he is graduating, and back in these days, they had two graduating classes because you could graduate each semester. So right now we kind of just recognize the June graduations, but he was a January graduate. He was very smart. He did really well in high school. He was able to skip some classes and was able to graduate a semester early from high school. Here is his picture in his graduating class yearbook, and every student was able to give a little philosophical statement philosophical sentence that described their beliefs, and I find it really amazing what he chose. He can who thinks he can. And that really came true when he went to Wayne. Really came true. So he went to Wayne in 1934, and in track, he is not mentioned at all in the yearbook. By 1935, he is not only in the yearbook, there's a couple of pictures of him in track, and they talk about him specifically in the track description of that yearbook. One of the reasons for this is that freshmen had separate teams. And so you had a separate freshman track team that may have had meets against other freshman track teams, but it didn't really count until you're on the varsity team as a sophomore. So this article talks about that a little bit too, where it talks about sophomores contributed the most Wayne points, and Al Tolmich was the high point winner, and they call these guys first year men. So first year, probably not his first year in track at the college, but first year men on the varsity track team. We talked about his size was a disadvantage. You saw that the track facilities were a disadvantage. And he was also Jewish at a time when anti-Semitism was really extremely rampant, and he was heading into that era of Hitler and World War II, the 1936 Olympics in Berlin, and there were a lot of things that really could have prevented him from being successful uh, as being successful as he was, especially in the hurdles and in track. Here's a picture of a track team, and you see him. He's third from the left, sitting on the fence in the back row. But this was one of the things that was in that 1935 yearbook, and this whole thing is about him. It says this young fellow was rated by newspapermen, coaches, and even by his own coach as one of the coming greats in the Midwest track circles. Just so who has this much written about them in their high school yearbook? I don't, unless I wrote it in myself, the back page. And on the very last paragraph there, it says this erstwhile tennis player has been molded into one of Wayne's best in track and is yet to be beaten in the low hurdle event this year. So he was great, really, even as a sophomore in the hurdles. So here we are in 1935, and we've got him winning three different events in this particular track meet. And one of them, the one in the middle, is a 100-yard dash. He was fast. He was fast, and he could do the hurdles, but he was fast. So he's also a good 100-yard dash man as well. And here's some sophomores, and he's the one on the left there in that picture, in both pictures. He is the runner on the left, and uh, they picked a sophomore team to go represent Wayne in Philadelphia at the Penn Relays, and Tolmich was part of that. Here's actually the same picture from the yearbook, but an actual real picture form to give you a little better shot of what Tolmich looked like. And now, if you see that newspaper right there, he's starting to catch the headlines. They're using his name in headlines about Wayne. So he's really starting to make a name for himself. Here's an article all about him. Wayne Track Ace, a leading star in the meet. Tolmich comes to fore, and he did just a fantastic job, and is becoming more and more successful. And like it had said, there's entire seasons where he was not beaten in certain events in track. 1936. 1936 is important because in July of 1936, that's when the Olympics are taking place. And so Tolmich leads Wayne to victory. Tolmich, a big star. So he is the guy. He is the one that always gets mentioned, always is out there, always making a difference, always winning points for the team. Back in these days, there weren't a ton of pictures in the paper, but if there was a picture, Tolmich was generally in it, and there he is, and he's the second from left, but is got his foot down on the ground, whereas the other people don't, so he's winning this race. So now we're getting into March of 1936, closer to when the Olympic qualifying is going to be, and he's tying and beating meet records. So track meets and stadiums had records, and they weren't they weren't state records, they weren't national records, they weren't world records, but they were records for that university or for that field. And so he would go places and he'd starting to beat those records. And this one, he beat a record in let's see, where was he here? Notre Dame, Western State, I think. Yeah, or maybe it was Indianapolis. So now he's going to start thinking about the Olympics. I find this interesting. The newspaper writing of that day found it necessary to put things like Tolmich, who is Jewish. Very often you saw uh, athletes, described as Negro or colored, and you never saw that with white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. They never said that, but they did say that in this article as one. Tolmich, who is Jewish, will concentrate upon the hurdles at the Olympic trials. Wants to make the trip to Germany. Uh, This is from the Windsor Star. When you swim star may win Olympic berth. They got a little typo there that should say Wayne U track star, because this is about Allan Tolmich. But in here, they're talking about him being outstanding Olympic possibilities in for him. Now we're moving into April. Uh, Allan Tolmich, sprint and hurdle star, and a Olympic prospect. So he's definitely not. He not only is he thinking about it, the newspapers are pushing that way as well. So I love this. You've got a here's an article where Wayne lost, but Tolmich is the star. He did well. And another article where Tolmich earned half of Wayne's points, and for the first time now he broke a Michigan record. So now he's starting to break records. But it's May of 1936, so we're getting close to when it needs to happen. So he went to some of the necessary track meets, and he uh, qualified to move to the next level of Olympic trial in the 100 meters, 200 meters, and 110 meter high hurdles. Now, one thing that you'll hear me say sometimes is yards and sometimes meters. When we're talking international competition, it's going to be meters, measured in meters. Or if the race is to get a time to qualify for an international competition, it's going to be meters. If it's American, it'll be yards. Uh, Unfortunately, here are two articles that said that he failed to place, failed to qualify. So it's June of 1936. Uh, it's the time is now. You're going to qualify now, and this was the top article is about the 110-meter hurdles. He didn't place, so he failed to qualify. Down below, the 200-meter run failed to qualify. I never found anything about the 100, but I assume the same was true, where he was unable to qualify in those meets. So it didn't happen in 1936, and he was unable to go to that. Uh, in the Wayne 1936 yearbook, my grandfather said, Al is pretty close to the best man the school has ever had in the hurdles. He can turn the sticks just about as fast as Ed Spence, who I showed you before, and will soon be in a select class with Spence and Dave Bouvet. Um, so that's high praise coming from a coach who's had Olympians come before Allan Tolmich. This summer, in the Michigan Jewish History Journal, there is going to be an article about a race between Tolmich and Jesse Owens. And this happened in May of 36, or just before all these Olympic trials. But let me read you just a small excerpt of that article. The final heat of the 100-meter dash was set. Lanes had been assigned. Lane 1, Mingy, College of William and Mary, Williamsburg, Virginia. Lane 2, Tolmich, Wayne University, Detroit, Michigan. Lane 3, Owens, that's Jesse Owens, Ohio State University, Columbus, Ohio. Lane 4, Stoller, University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, Michigan. Lane 5, Reeves, University of Texas, Austin, Texas. Lane 6, Wallander, University of Texas, Austin, Texas. 35,000 people were in the stands at the University of Pennsylvania's Franklin Field. It was windy, with temperatures falling from the high of 60 degrees as the afternoon became evening. There would be no new world records tonight, with athletes running into the teeth of the wind. Jesse Owens had won the long jump competition in the afternoon. Without Peacock, and I'll have to back up, earlier in the article it talks about Jesse Owens and Ulyss Peacock being contenders for the upcoming Olympics and just about any race. Peacock had beaten Owens and was one of the few people to ever beat Owens. Without Peacock, but Peacock got hurt the evening before by pulling a muscle in a race. Without Peacock, it was expected Owens would put the 100-meter dash in his win column. The race was about to begin. The starter did all the usual preparation for the runners and held his pistol in the air. With the bang of the pistol, Stoller and Tolmich started quickly and left the other four runners, including Owens, behind. It was Stoller-Tolmich neck and neck across the 25-meter mark. Owens was in third, catching up, but with Stoller in front, Tolmich a step behind. The three runners were within a meter of each other. Owens caught Tolmich at the 60-meter mark. Sam Stoller, University of Michigan, was in the lead with 30 meters remaining, but he could hear the footsteps of Jesse Owens immediately behind him. Owens had passed Tolmich and caught Stoller with 20 meters left in the race. With one final surge, Owens broke the tape about 4 feet ahead of Stoller, and then Tolmich, a close third. Tolmich may not have beaten Owens, but few athletes can boast they were in front of Jesse Owens in any race. So that is an actual newspaper picture right there. And it shows Jesse Owens, Ohio, right in the middle, Al Tolmich there to the right, and Sam Stoller to the left. Now, Sam Stoller, well, Jesse Owens gained fame in the 1936 Olympics by winning 4 gold medals. Sam Stoller gained fame for a different reason that you may be familiar with. There were two Jewish runners, Sam Stoller and Marty Glickman, who were pulled from their race the night before they were supposed to race in the 1936 Olympics. Um, and um, and and so and you could tell how great Stoller was. I mean, he's running right next to Jesse Owens, so he was quite the athlete. And a lot of people believe that the reason that was done was due to anti-Semitism at the 1936 Olympics and Hitler's influence against Jews. Now, the qualifying for the Olympics has passed, and Tomic ties a state record in the 110-meter high hurdles. The next year in February, he ties a world record for the first time and breaks a national record. So his prime was just about 6 months too late that he was really now getting good. If he just could have been there 6 months earlier, he might have gone to the 1936 Olympics. So I'm going to keep a little record for you because the title of this is Against the Odds, How a Jewish Hurdler Set 10 World Records. So I want you to know what those 10 world records are. So I'm going to keep a record of the tied ones to the right and the records broken on the left. One of my favorite stories, and this is from the Coach of Champions book, is a race that Tolmich had against Forrest Towns in July of 1937. Forrest Towns won the gold medal at the 1936 Olympics in this event. He was the world record holder in the event, 110-meter high hurdles, and he had not been beaten in any race that he had run in for 2 years. So in 1937, Tolmich and Towns raced against each other. The lane assignments had Tolmich and Towns separated by one hurdler, although each would have sight of the other through their peripheral vision. It was Roy Staley between them. Staley had set the world record for the 120-yard high hurdles in 1935. If Tolmich and Towns couldn't be next to each other, Staley was a good person to have between them. He would definitely push the pace. The formal introductions of the athletes began. Pollard, 1936 Olympic bronze medalist in the 110-meter high hurdles. Moore, tied the world record in the 120-yard high hurdles in 1935. Towns, current world record holder and unbeaten in 2 years. Staley, world record holder in 1935. Tolmich, unbeaten in 27 starts this year. And Kirkpatrick, who qualified for the Olympic trials in 1936. This was the first year the AAU was using the new L-shaped hurdles. This new hurdle design allowed runners to hit the hurdles and not be knocked totally out of the race by the force of the blow. L-shaped hurdles could tilt and even fall over after being hit. The previous T-shaped design was immovable. The new design helped prevent injuries to athletes. From the athlete's perspective, they allowed for more risk to be taken with each hurdle. Runners were called to the starting position. On your marks, said the starter. Set. The pistol went off. and the six hurdlers leapt out of their start. This was a race of champions. Tolmich's speed to the first hurdle put him over at first. The height difference in the other hurdlers allowed them to gain on Tolmich over the next few hurdles. It was neck and neck through hurdles 6, 7, and 8. By hurdle 9, Tolmich had a slight lead. At hurdle 10, all six hurdlers leapt almost simultaneously. Tolmich had a lead of about 1 foot. The speed that he and DL had worked on over and over came to the forefront. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, Tolmich quickly counted in his head. The final tenths of a second seemed like they were in slow motion. Through his peripheral vision, Tolmich could see runners to his right, but slightly behind him. It was Staley that was running just behind, and he blocked the view of Towns. Tolmich concentrated on his fast speed and lunged to the ribbon and felt it hit his chest. Victory! Allan Tolmich of Wayne State University had won the race. The crowd was on its feet. The cheers echoed miles from the stadium. 12,000 people had just witnessed history being made. The AAU had a new national champion in the 110-meter high hurdles. In a surprise that shocked the entire crowd, Forrest Towns not only had his 2-year winning streak broken, he placed third behind Roy Staley. With a strong wind in the face of all the hurdlers, there were no world records set. Tolmich crossed the finish line in 14.5 seconds. Dancing a modified version of an Irish jig on the grassy inside part of the track in a white shirt, tie, vested suit coat, dress shoes, and hat, with a stopwatch in his hand, was D.L. Holmes. There was no bigger smile louder or a cheer louder than his. He would wait until the athletes had shaken hands and spoken with each other before congratulating Tolmich. That too small gym at Old Main had produced another champion. As the other hurdlers in the race called it a day, Tolmich prepared for the 200-meter low hurdle event, which was coming up in about 20 minutes. The events were so close together that most hurdlers chose one or the other. Not Tolmich. He went on to win that event also, setting a new meet record and becoming the AAU national champion in the 200-meter low hurdles. So the next day, the newspapers talk about Tolmich blazes way, new heroes for track, and that he broke another record. So now we have record tied and record broken in the same day here. Tolmich beat Towns again in 1938, this time in the 45-yard high hurdles. And in doing so, he also broke a record or tied a record. So now we've got 4 records tied, 2 records broken. Tolmich sets a world record. He's racing against Towns again, and he sets a new world record, but then he falls in the finals. But in that preliminary heat, he set the world record, and it was a better time than Towns ran in the finals. So here we have another record broken in the 65-meter high hurdles. I'll just show you some headlines, and I won't go through every single one of his wins, but look at these headlines. Tolmich betters world record. Tolmich sets world record. Tolmich cracks world record. Breaks hurdle record. Tolmich breaks he is in every headline about just breaking record after record after record after record. Ties a world record, equals a world record. So wherever he went, he was making news and either equaling or bettering records that had been set years before. So now this is what the list looks like by the end of 1939. He's got 9 world records tied, and he's got 7 world records broken. Now, sometimes he's tying his own record, and sometimes he's breaking his own record, but it still counts in the record books. And these 3 all happened the same day. Tied 2 and broke 1 at the exact same day. Unbelievable what he was doing. But unfortunately, in 1939 instead of 1936, but the 1940 Olympics are coming up. So here's a picture of my grandfather in the middle, Al Tolmich to the right, and another hurdler and co-captain of the track team in 1939, Don McElroy. And he's still doing tennis. This is 1939. Uh, Al Tolmich, one of Uncle Sam's best bets in the 1940 Olympic hurdle races, moved to the quarterfinals in tennis because he was still competing there. Yet he has advice to hurdlers of don't play tennis, even though he's breaking world records and playing tennis. So he's a 1940 Olympic hopeful, makes the front page of New Orleans newspaper, uh, going to run in this Sugar Bowl. But unfortunately, due to Hitler and World War II, the 1940 Olympics were canceled, as were the 1944 Olympics. So he never got that opportunity. He was just a little bit too late in peaking for the 1936, and he was right there for the 1940s, but they were canceled, so his opportunity was lost. That didn't stop him from running. That previous decision was made in December of 39. Here we are in February of 40. Tomic shatters a 9-year-old world record. So he's still out there running. He'd already graduated from Wayne, but he was still practicing there and still working with Coach Holmes. Records fall. Tomic sets two more world records at this event. Absolutely unbelievable. And here he is in 1941, ties another record. He's just amazing, absolutely amazing. Another Tomic sets world record, cracks old records. 1941, he is doing absolutely fantastic. So now, when we take a look at his final tally, he's got 13 tied world records, and he's got actually 11 records broken. So, Hillary, I apologize. We should have said how a Jewish hurdler set 11 world records. Uh, and if you look at what has been written about him, he's in three Hall of Fames, and in all three of them mention two other races not on this records broken list, but I couldn't find any collaborating evidence for that in the newspaper, so I didn't put him on there. So it's very possible that he broke 13 world records and tied 13 world records, which is just unbelievable. And these two were tied on the same day. That's not it. I didn't accidentally put those in. This is the same thing. He tied him in the preliminary and then tied it again in the finals. When he graduated from Wayne, he became a phys ed teacher in a Detroit elementary school. And then when at the bombing of Pearl Harbor, he enlisted in the Army. And this is a picture from Army training camp, and that's Tolmich to the left, climbing one of the things that they make them climb for physical fitness there. And then when he returned, he did not go back into education. He went into business and eventually moved away from Detroit and was married and lived his life in Indianapolis. So he ended up in three halls of fame. There's the Wayne State Athletic Hall of Fame, and he was a charter inductee in 1976. Wayne State's Hall of Fame began in 76, and he was one of the first six people to be inducted, as was my grandfather. Then in 99, he was admitted to the Michigan Jewish Sports Hall of Fame, and in 2002, the International Jewish Sports Hall of Fame. So absolutely amazing. But if you look at the Michigan one down there at the bottom, he said it says that he had a national champion 37 and 110 and 200-meter hurdles, and I could not find that. But if that's true, then that would be on that left side of the column. So he was absolutely amazing, and I did additional research to tell you this story. The story that's going to be in the Michigan Jewish History Journal this summer is different than this, and the story that's in Coach of Champions is different. Yet there's so many stories about Allan Tolmich. He is just absolutely amazing. If you're interested in getting a copy of Coach of Champions, notice I put Amazon on the bottom of this list. Yes, you can get it from Amazon, but it would be so much better to get it from someone else. So Wayne State University has it, and there's a couple of places a couple of nice small stores in Detroit that have it as well. I'm happy to take any questions that anybody has about fantastic runner and hurdler Allan Tolmich.
Well, first, I want to say thank you so much. And as far as anybody that is interested in purchasing a copy of Coach of Champions, we will be sending out a link when we send out the recording of tonight, so you can access those. But I just want to thank you. We have a tradition of shaking our hands like this to give you applause. It's the International Sign Language applause. So we're giving you
Nice.
a round of applause since most of us are muted and you cannot hear us. So thank you so much. That was absolutely amazing. So if you'll in the chat, one of the comments, and I'm gonna have Jeannie Weiner, if you're back from, if you want to turn your video back on. So Jeannie is one of our past presidents with JHSM, and she put into the chat, and I'll just read it real quick for those of you that maybe don't have access to it easily. My husband was a cross country runner at Wayne State in the early 50s. He told me often about his very special coach, Coach Holmes. Coach was his mentor and often advised him, including about career paths and difficult professors. I have many coach stories from my husband who truly loved his coach. And I know that Jeannie's hubby is a blessed memory. But Jeannie, do you want to turn your video on
I,
and
I,
share anything else about that? That's amazing. I had no idea.
That's
yeah,
awesome.
it's so neat. I didn't realize either until I started listening to the lecture that I had this close connection. I can there,
Well, there you are. Okay,
there.
good.
I was blocked by Hillary, not
Okay.
me. No, my husband talked so frequently about coach, 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 and going to get help from him on a lot of things. And he took the guys up to Manitoulin Island for
Yes,
training,
yes,
and I
yes.
have all of those stories too. So I could maybe write a book about them.
All right. Well, I need to make sure I get your contact information. We need to go have a cup of coffee sometime. I'd love to
I
hear
would
them.
love it. I would love it.
Let's do
Just
it.
I could share hours of Coach Holmes stories.
I would love to hear them.
I'll make sure the two of you are connected. I'll take
Thank
care.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
That is so great. I actually I did a presentation at OPC Rochester, and somebody came to the presentation and said, "Yeah, your grandfather was my coach." I'm going, "What? You're kidding me? Wow! Oh,
Yeah,
that's it's so there are not many people still living that were coached by him, and
right.
but the stories still live, which and that's one of the things that I really wanted to do with this book. The story of Coach Holmes needed to be told, and when my uncle said he wasn't able to complete it, and then it wasn't really his Coach Holmes story anyway, I knew I just had to do it, and I even felt if I never found a publisher, it would still be just great to have it written down. But Wayne State University Publishing, it's a Wayne State story, and they wanted it, so it worked out great. I didn't have to go knocking on a bunch of doors. I knocked on one, and they were so interested. But yeah, I would love to hear more about it. And the cross country, I don't hear too much about. It's cross country wasn't quite as newspaper worthy. More of
Hmm.
the articles are more Tolmich, or if you have a really great sprinter or something like that, they make the newspaper, whereas cross country does not.
Well, I think that is absolutely amazing, and I had no idea when I saw you put that comment in the chat. I was like, "Are you kidding me? Really?" Oh my goodness. Dr. Margaret Lincoln has put into the chat for us. If anyone is interested, you can grab that link because she put in the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum page about those two Jewish athletes, Marty Glicksman and Sam Stoller. If you want to read more about their last minute cancellation, I don't know what to call it, but their last minute being pulled, so that Jesse Owens ran in that race. I think he was always scheduled to run. Is that right, Keith? And they were to be also running with him. I'm not sure how the story goes.
It was a relay. Yeah, it was a relay that they were in, and so Jesse Owens was one of the runners, I'm sure. Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I mean that again, that's a whole nother.
It's another book
presentation that
for you.
would be incredibly interesting. And if you want me to do that one next, let me know. Give me the green light, and we'll
Okay,
do it.
it's a deal. It's a deal.
I'd
Well,
like to
we
research that.
we already got you to do a presentation and write for the journal. So, let's just do the trifecta. I'll get you to have another
Uh,
presentation for us.
I would be interested in learning more about that because Allan Tolmich and Sam Stoller ran against each other a lot. I always see Stoller's name, and if it was a dash, quite often Stoller won. He was extremely fast, so he was a fantastic athlete. He just went to U of M. He didn't come to Wayne.
Darn.
Yeah, darn.
That would have been an amazing team if they'd
That
been
would
on
have been
the same
amazing.
team. Can you
Yes.
imagine? Oh my goodness. Well, I don't have any more chat questions in the chat, but we're a pretty intimate group tonight. So if anybody else has any questions, go ahead and unmute and then we can call upon you. I saw Elaine Gross unmute. Elaine, do you have a question?
Yeah, that Sam Stoller, Ricky Stoller, one of our board members.
Is it a relation? Do you
I
know?
don't know. Well, you have to find out because
I
it's
don't
not a
know.
real common name.
Yeah, I don't
He
know.
could have gone to U of M
Could be.
at that
Could be.
time.
We'll
Yeah.
have to we'll have to ask him.
Yes,
That would
definitely.
be we're just have all kinds of connections coming out of the woodwork. I love it. It's
It
amazing.
was it was really great, fascinating.
Oh,
Loved
thank you.
it. Your presentation was wonderful.
He is. It would be hard to have a boring presentation about Alan Tolmich.
Yeah.
Mm.
He's an amazing athlete.
It
Yeah.
sounds like it. Sounds like Jeffrey Lincoln. I see you're unmuted. Do you have a question you'd like to ask?
Sure, Keith. Again, incredible story, especially about Allen. About Coach Holmes, I really admire how he, built the programs, but he didn't take the credit. He
Mhm.
passed it on to the kids, which is amazing.
Right,
You don't
right,
see that today. Everyone says, "Oh, it's all about me."
right.
Um, do you see? I guess in today's era, who does he relate to, Coach Holmes? If
Wow. I'm trying to think. And maybe help me because my football knowledge isn't great. Oh, Lou Holtz comes to mind.
sure.
And he was always just kind of very humble about it, yet he produced a bunch of winning teams, and so it was him. But he always talked about how great his guys were. Tom Izzo. He'd
Oh,
be
perfect.
somebody.
Yeah.
He would be a guy who he it's him, but
Mhm.
he always points to his players as the ones who are so great and making the team win and making all the necessary plays. So yeah, it's amazing. One of the things that I didn't say because there's some conflicts in the story, and I talk more about this in the book and also a little bit in the article about how Tolmich actually ended up on the track team because there's some articles out there that say that my grandfather saw him playing tennis and said, "Hey, I want you on the track team." Um, but then there's conflicting information that says that he would just walked on because he had done track in high school. But it was my grandfather did have a knack for recognizing talent. There was one guy because he did teach phys ed classes in his phys ed class, and he went up to him and he said, "Have you ever high jumped?" The guy said, "No." "Uh, Come to my office and let's get you out for track. Let's just try that." And the next year he was the NCAA champion in the high jump, and he could just he could see natural ability in people as well, and know how to exploit it. One of the few guys who's still alive, his name's John Telford, and he was a 440 guy, but in high school he ran the 100. And if you run the 100, running the whole way around the track seems like you're a cross country runner. That's a long way to do one lap around the track. And so my grandfather said, "You're going to be running the 440." And Tony says, "No, I'm not." He goes, "Yes, you are." And he would have gone to the 1956 Olympics except for a pulled muscle. So he really could look at somebody and work with their innate skill to make them be the best that they could possibly be. And I'm really sad that yeah, he died when I was 3. So I
Mhm.
didn't get any, athletic coaching from him, which is too bad because I was definitely very average in high school, and maybe he could have helped me out.
Sure. I look forward to getting the book, and thank you so much for
Oh,
this
well,
evening.
thank you. I'm so glad that you saw the presentation.
Thank you. No problem.
So, did I hear you correctly, Keith, that your grandfather designed a new type of hurdle? Did I hear you say that right? That he
Yes.
designed that?
Yeah,
Tell us more about that. And is that it's very similar to the design that's used today, right?
oh yeah, right, right. And I mean, obviously he didn't invent hurdles, but he invented the folding hurdle. And one thing that like those old hurdles that I showed you in that one picture that were totally stationary, um, hurdles are supposed to offer resistance. You can't just run through the hurdles and knock them all down. That's an unfair advantage. So they've got to offer some resistance, but not as much resistance as those early hurdles, which would, probably scrape off couple layers of skin off the back of your leg if you hit it wrong. So, the hurdle that he designed was a folding hurdle. It was the L-shaped design. I believe the L shape existed, but he modified it to make it better. He also did the same thing with starting blocks. He invented a new type of starting block. He invented a timer machine that helped long distance runners
Mm-hmm.
know where they were supposed to be on the track at a certain time. It would make a
Mm-hmm.
noise, and
Mm-hmm.
it was also used for swimmers. He developed a measuring device for pole vaulters. So he was able to do many different you know changes, modifications to track equipment to make it better for runners. And he was always messing around with that. There's a a chapter in the book called Tinkering with Track, and it's
Mm-hmm.
all about his various inventions.
Wow. Jeannie's nodding her head. I get the impression you heard
I've,
some of those
I've heard
stories
these
about
stories,
those.
and the same thing about shoes. He was always trying to improve their shoes so they weren't being injured. The one thing I love that you said, which is also reflected in what my husband told me, was his unconcern about who was on the team in terms of their diversity. He
Mhm.
was just so broad in his thinking, and it was all about the kids, and he didn't label people. And
Right.
what happened as a result was that these team members became very good friends
Yeah.
with people across the spectrum,
Hmm.
black, white, Jewish, whatever. Very unusual, certainly in the 30s, but even when my husband was in the 50s. And what a special man! What a special man he was. So
Yeah. Well, that's very nice to hear you say that. And again, we got to have that cup of coffee. But he wanted talent, and he didn't really care how that came. He would work with anybody. And the one things I also heard from through some of these interviews that my uncle did was he would also care about you if you were not Allan Tolmich, if you
Mhm.
if you weren't even winning your semifinals, if you were a guy who never scored a point, you were still very important to him and the team. You didn't have to be Allan Tolmich. You could be just the regular guy on the team, and he'd have a special workout just for you to help you improve where you were. Um, and then what you said with discrimination, they'd go to Philadelphia for the Penn relays every year, and so he had like this green book in his head, I think. I've never seen one written. So he knew
Mhm,
what restaurants they could stop
mhm.
at that would serve them. He knew what
Wow.
hotels they could stay at, um, and it would allow them all to stay because they would sometimes at some hotels ask, are you Jewish? And if the answer was yes, you couldn't stay there.
Mhm.
They'd ask the black players, walk around to the back door, and they'd say, no, we're not doing that, and they just go someplace else. So he didn't want to put the team through that, so he would go to places where the experience had been good, and they would frequent those. But it was he went to great lengths to make everybody feel like they were just part of the team.
That's absolutely amazing. Susan, I saw you were unmuted earlier. Do you have a question you'd like to ask Keith?
Yeah, as you were describing the coach, it made me think of the woman by the name of Pat Summitt, who was the coach for the Lady Vols in basketball. Just that kind of giving, loving, caring person for years and years. So, but this was a wonderful presentation. I appreciate it so much. Thank you. Thank you. I can't wait to read the book.
Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Well, I know I am so thrilled that you connected with us and you reached out to us about this. And thank you so much for taking the time. I know you did a ton of extra research to make it even more poignant for us. So I think we need to give him another round of applause. So everybody shake their hands. There we go. Now you get to hear your amazing applause. So I just want to remind everyone on the call that we did record tonight and we recorded the conversation after. So we will send that out. I know there was a little bit of a glitch, and I think there were a couple of you that got your link a little bit late. So don't worry, you didn't miss any of his presentation. He'll go back and be able to pick up where you came into the meeting. And we will make sure that you also have a link to be able to purchase Coach of Champions and anything else that you might need. And I'll make sure that if anybody needs anything else, they can certainly reach out to me. But I just want to thank you so much, Keith, for such a fun and informative. And I have to say, although it has zero to do with track and field, being an Indiana University graduate and getting ready to go and applaud and be so excited about this game coming up, I just kind of feel such a symbiotic, I'm really into sports right now, even though my degree is in opera. So thank you so much for giving us another view into this and for educating us about someone. You know, we say within Judaism that it is Lador Vador, from generation to generation, and that may their memory be a blessing. And you're doing a beautiful job of making sure that Coach Holmes's memory is staying a blessing, and how wonderful and what a blessing for us. So thank you very, very much.
Well, thank you.
One last shout out
One thing.
for an outstanding presentation, and perhaps the title could be flipped and it could be Champion of Coaches, and your grandfather certainly was the champion of
Wow, that's
coaches.
so nice. That's so
Great.
nice. Thank you. That's beautiful.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Thank you, Gigi. That's lovely. All right, my dears. Well, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. Give me 1 second while I do that.